approach into understanding the various facets of this, and also discussing more than that. Like at the end of the day, today's event is about the opportunities that come from the crisis, and we'll try to gain from their insights as well. My name is Nikolas Katsimpras. I'm a lecturer at Columbia University. I specialize in international conflict analysis. I am based mostly in DC, where I work as a practitioner or political risk analysis, and I'm a former officer of the Greek Navy. Actually, this year is my 10th year in the States, which I have no idea how time passed so quickly. And without wasting too much of your time, I would like to introduce you to our speakers, because they are the ones who bring all the experience that we want to share with them today. Now, the first one is Mr. Costas Mastoras. He needs no introduction. He's the president of Optimum Foods and one of the most well-known Greek businessmen in the food industry in the US. He's a native of beautiful Kavala and has been working in the food industry since a very young age, when he started working in the fish markets, in local restaurants. So he knows the business from the bottom up. He studied economics in Thessaloniki, in New York. He has an MBA from St. John's University. However, he's mostly well known as the founder of one of the favorite supermarkets of the Homogenia, Titan Foods. And we're particularly lucky to have Mr. Mastoras today with us. Since his company represents over 200 Greek suppliers, he imports thousands of SKUs, and he supplies major U.S. supermarket chains. His perspective is also unique, since he's also considered the father of Greek yogurt here in the United States. So he has a lot of insights about introducing new products in this market. Good morning, Mr. Mastoras. Thank you for being with us. Then we have Mr. Thanasis Economou. Thanasis Economou is the general manager of Loumidis Food. Mr. Economou has decades-long experience working in a wide variety of Greek businesses here in the U.S. He's particularly knowledgeable in issues of finance, technology, defense sectors, before he even joined the food industry working with Loumidis. This gives Mr. Economou a unique perspective across various sectors and projects, and he can have some very interesting insights specifically about small businesses, because his specific human-centered approach has been interesting when if you know more about the reputation of Loumidis and Mr. Economou, you know that he has been investing in the relationship with his clients, his vendors, and his operators. So he will be able to elaborate more on his perspective, not only on the opportunities that we see that arise from the crisis, but also on some of the tips for Greek businesses and how to navigate the regulatory considerations in this very complex market here in the U.S. And then we have our legal dynamic duo, Mr. Koutsoudakis, Andreas Koutsoudakis. Chronia pola, by the way. Couple days this was your name day. And Mr. Iakovou. They are the founding partners of KI Legal. Mr. Koutsoudakis is a shareholder, focuses on shareholder and commercial disputes. He focuses on governmental investigations, audits, contracts. But he has a very interesting focus on asset protection strategies, corporate cleanup, and other things on what happens on the back end where things go wrong. So he can really elaborate also on what happens to protect ourselves from getting there. And Mr. Iakovou as well focuses on asset management and other business-related matters, specifically on negotiations on commercial leases, investor terms, bylaws, vendor negotiations, which are also extremely useful for our listeners, for our viewers, about how should they be thinking about these very complex topics. That will give us an overview of this very complex framework that they need to be having in mind in Greece when approaching the whole, venture of engaging the U.S. market. And lastly, we have Mr. Georgios Michailidis. He has been the head of the Greek Trade Office at the Consulate General of Greece in New York since 2016, and he has extensive experience as a public servant in the Greek Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He has served in Serbia and Lebanon and other places, and his perspective is very useful since he's in touch with hundreds of Greek businesses that try to work with the U.S. So he can provide us insights not only on regulatory issues, but also like the hands-on, on-the-ground reality of the challenges and opportunities Greek businesses face when trying to enter the market. And he can filter sort of what we heard from the business panelists and our legal team as well. So I look forward to see how this all comes together. This is a very tight panel we have here today. I know it's the last one, but this is the best one in my opinion. So everything comes together in this panel. So let's start with Mr. Mastoras first. So kalimera again, Mr. Mastoras, thank you for being with us. So we are still going through this crisis. You have been through so many other crises in the past. So I have a two-part question for you. The first one is, what would you say are some of the main challenges and opportunities for Greek businesses that want to promote the products here in the United States? And which are some of your insights in terms of the regulatory and licensing realities, considerations that they should keep in mind, and how to navigate them?
First of all, good morning to everybody, and it's a privilege to be with all of you. In my 40 years career in the food business, I thought I had seen all, but the pandemic came to show me that we are really in uncharted waters. What's going on right now, nobody was prepared for this. Nobody, for many, many years, we used to import foodstuffs from Greece. The food service market, the restaurants kept opening one after the other. We had many, many high-class Greek restaurants, and the food service was expanding as well. The Greek products, we placed them into the major supermarket chains. So everything was going fine. And then the pandemic came. All of a sudden, we saw the food service market collapsing. Many restaurants closed down. We had enough supplies to supply those restaurants, and all of a sudden we didn't know what to do with these products. We had olives and cheeses and other foodstuffs from Greece just sitting in our warehouses. In the meantime, the restaurants were closed, and nobody knows when they're going to come back in business. I talk to operators every day, and even those that are open, they don't know when they're going to be, on the profitable side. At the same time, we were hit with a huge demand from the retailers that they were demanding a lot of goods because everybody was staying home and they were asking for many products. So all this brought about a big upset in the market, and we didn't know how to handle this. We went through that. I don't want to sound pessimistic, but I think that the next couple of years are going to be very challenging for all of us, us importers as well as the exporters from Greece, because I happen to have also two supermarkets, one in Astoria and one in Long Island. You know what the number one selling item right now is? Pasta products. People eat a lot of pasta, 2-3 times more pasta than they used to. That shows that people have demand for basic goods. We're going to need the Greek state, the enterprise in Greece, to invest money and promote through social media Greek products. That's going to be a big help for us. And I think it's a proposal from my side that the Greek state and invest in Greece should consider very seriously into making a campaign through social media, Facebook, Instagram, so forth, the young people that usually read those social media to promote Greek foodstuffs. That's going to be a very big help for us. And lastly, the name of the game now is electronic trade. We have seen a tremendous increase in electronic sales. We see big companies, even big companies that like Kraft and Heinz, creating their own website and choose to go directly to the final consumer. So that means that we have to redesign our products, redesign our strategies, and also we have to offer not raw materials as we used to, olive oil and olives, but what I call ready recipes. The consumers now ask for ready recipes like cheese pies, spinach pies, meals. They're asking us for ready meals.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that? That's interesting. Are there any different regulatory or licensing considerations if you were to, for those thinking of engaging in that specific, ready recipes or the electronics, either one that you're, identified as being important? Is there anything that we should keep in mind in terms of the licensing requirements, or is it sort of what it has always been?
The only obstacle we have is to import stuff from Greece that has meat products, chicken and meat, because this is a USDA issue, it's not an FDA that we import right now. In other words, we cannot import, for example, moussaka, which is one of the biggest items that consumers ask for it. So I know there's a process in Washington, D.C. to get approval the country of Greece as a meat exporter to the United States, but we haven't got a final approval yet. Hopefully we're going to get it during the next year to import foodstuffs with chicken or meat, but as an ingredient, not as a product by itself. You can import, for example, gyros from Greece, but you can probably would be able to import as an ingredient foodstuffs that will include chicken or meat.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Mr. Mastoras. I look forward to hearing more from you in the end. Hopefully we have more time. Mr. Economou, again, you're a very experienced business person here in the U.S. You have seen different crises. You've seen this one. You work very, very closely with your operators, so you have also their perspective as well. So what would you say are some of the main challenges and opportunities for quick businesses that want to promote the products here in the U.S.? And which are some of your insights in terms of the licensing considerations that they should keep in mind and how to navigate them?
Well, first, good morning to everyone. I'd like to thank the Chamber as well as the Exporters Association, Hellenic Exporters Association for putting this together and for inviting us and allowing me to represent Loumidis Foods. This crisis, as Mr. Mastoras pointed out, is unlike anything that we faced in the past. You know, economic downturns we've all experienced, whether it be in real estate or economic business or overall. However, something like this has really forced us to, as we have done here, is to kind of take a step back and press the reset button and figure out, for something like this going forward, what is it that we're not prepared for? What is it that our operators weren't prepared for that we need to help navigate them through? And this extends all the way back to our suppliers in Greece. Typically, you would work with them anyway to make sure that their labels are compliant. You can point them in the right direction with respect to having that taken care of. But it goes beyond just the regulatory paper-pushing process of getting something in. For us to succeed, and we as Greek Americans, we're probably always putting our heritage first when it comes to our business accomplishments. You need to understand the market that you're dealing with. This is not Greece or Europe. This is a much larger, diverse market that you're dealing with. So your appeal on your products extends beyond the regulatory compliance that you're typically going to go through. You have to really look at things. Now, going through a crisis like this forces you even more. You know, as is pointed out, there are certain staples that people are looking for. One, because it has a shelf life that allows them to keep it in their kitchen for an extended period of time, not knowing when we're coming out of this and returning to some sense of normalcy. So you have to decide when you want to introduce a product, especially in a crisis like this. So that would be key. You have to find someone that has the experience in the market, whether it be Loumidis Foods or Optimum or any other the competitors that we have, that really can navigate and guide you through not just the process, but for you to get a sense that they have an understanding of your product and how it fits within the market here in the United States and what those promotional channels look like, whether it be social media, whether it be e-commerce, or just having a distribution network with a client base that fits that product and creating a need. Because sometimes there are products that people don't know that they need until you bring it to them. The question is, how do you bring it out? How do you represent it, from the health benefits to it, which is extremely important these days? So those are the issues and the intangible characteristics that are important to the success of introducing any product, more so in particular during this crisis.
Okay, that's very interesting. In terms of the specific opportunities, because you said that you see a trend or you see something, what would be the number one thing that our Greek audience should keep in mind when thinking of after the crisis, what opportunities would arise specifically with quick products and the need here for those products?
I think because more people travel than in the past, it's not uncommon to come across anyone in the United States that either hasn't been to Greece or Europe or doesn't have a dream to go there. For us, it's a question of building that experience, either reminding them of what they enjoyed or giving them an insight of what they have to look forward to. I think the products that we have are clean, ingredients that people can easily understand. I think those are the things that you have to understand here in the United States, the trends, because the market today, from Greek Americans to Americans in general, are more knowledgeable now in food, in products. They have an understanding of what it is that they're consuming, and they're very conscious about what they're consuming these days. You now have to address that. You have to figure out where you fit. Now, there are indulgences that we enjoy regardless of what the health benefits are, if there are any at all. But still, you have to keep that in mind. And these are the important things. And we try to identify products that we think fit what we want as a mission for Loumidis Foods, as well as for the customers that we talk to and we listen to on a daily basis. Why don't you have this? Why don't you have that? And trying to figure out what can we do that's cost effective and would benefit our customers, because at the end of the day, their success is our success.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So we heard the business perspective. We have heard some of the very interesting insights of what's going on here in the U.S. Currently. Mr. Koutsoudakis, Mr. Iakovou, can you tell us a little bit, like a one-on-one, like the rough overview of some of the main regulatory priorities for a Greek business that wants to enter the U.S. market, how to navigate them, and maybe some of the tips that you have, some smart decisions that could help those businesses be prepared to handle something that currently looks as a complex topic to them, but if you sort of streamline it, it's not that much difficult to understand.
Sure. Thank you, everyone, for having us here, by the way. It's a great event. We're going to go over some really macro-level things in as quick of a time frame as possible. But, considerations for foreign companies entering the U.S. market are many. To Thanasis' point, there is a complex, different tax, legal, and various implications that just do not exist in Europe and Greece. The U.S. legal system has different jurisdictions, for example, right? You have New York, Delaware, California, just at a statewide level. Then you have city and local law. You have federal law. Some areas of the law are governed solely on the federal level, such as patent, copyright, and immigration. If you're doing an EB-5 investment visa, for example. Other things such as the laws governing contracts and employment relationships are more often than not going to be governed by state and local law. Some things are governed by federal and state law. So these types of nuances are something that have to be considered when looking to either form an entity, whether a corporation or an LLC. You're going to most likely want to form in a jurisdiction where you're going to be located. Other areas that are commonly formed in is Delaware, Washington State for legal and tax implications. With C corporations, again, foreign entities cannot designate as S corporations, but from a C corporation perspective, you have the issue of double taxation, things that may or may not exist in other jurisdictions. LLCs have less corporate and mechanical formalities, and then from an asset protection perspective, members of LLCs can become sub-entities, right, as opposed to natural persons, which will help whenever there's things personal liability oriented in the labor and employment context. From a contracts perspective, I cannot stress the importance of having a qualified business attorney represent you in every single contractual negotiation. Every single word and phrase has been litigated at some point in the past 250 years of the United States. We are a litigious country. That's a good and a bad thing. It's good in that we can hold people and entities accountable for whenever they do things like infringe on your patent or trademarks. It's bad in that you need to build that into your just overall general understanding and budget that you will be sued at some point. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It just means you're going to have to explain yourself, and more often than not, the court will decide that you didn't do anything wrong. So the other thing I'd like to just say in my very short time is the ability to secure commercial financing in this country is unparalleled. Whether it's a line of credit or whether it's a commercial mortgage, one of the things that lenders look for is just, from a new entity, is just a strong track record of financials and bookkeeping. That's how they're going to be able to properly underwrite. And being able to leverage in this country is something that allows a mom and pop to go from a one place to maybe doing business across state lines and on a much bigger macro level.
That's great. Andrea, you want to elaborate more on that?
So, I mean, Michael hit a lot of the key points. You know, from a regulatory standpoint, the big monster in the room is the FDA, Federal Drug Administration. Under that, you have a number of different statutes. One indicating the nutrition requirements, one indicating the label requirements. There's different rules depending on the type of product, cosmetic, medical devices, you know, food. All these different things have their own rules. And at the end of the day, what you really need to do, and this is the key with anyone you do a business with, and why this panel is so great, it's never just one topic, right? You heard from all of these different people. You have business and legal issues. The key is doing both, always thinking about both. And I'll give you a perfect example. You should not be thinking about my product is the best and I just got to get in the market in the US. What is your market in the US? US market is door one. Then you have to know where you're going to be, where you'd like to be in a year, 5 years, 10 years, right? Is your goal to have your bottle of olive oil on every table in New York restaurants? If so, what's your plan to get there? And let's make sure you set yourself up accordingly. If an opportunity pops up to sell olive oil bottles in Virginia, well, all of your agreements may need to be modified, right? You don't just jump into the opportunity, because if you don't do it right, everything is going to be affected and potentially destroyed. So you really need to plan and you really need to think carefully. And I think I'm going to jump here on the Loumidis side and Optimum Food side, but I can pretty much bet that any person that you're ultimately trying to enter into their store, their access points, their distribution channels, they would love nothing more than to see that you have your ducks in a row, that you've done the homework. You do not need extensive work with regards to labeling instructions. You know the legal system. You have an American bank account, and that you have done all of the things that present you as an organized and I guess sophisticated company that has a plan that is organized enough. Because at the end of the day, those two people on this panel, they have to decide who are they going to bet on, right? And we talked about this before we started this panel. With every crisis is amazing opportunity, and I'm so inspired to have 1,000 people on this call for Greeks looking to do business in the United States. That's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a great thing because as a culture, it's so amazing, and it's what we've done so well over the last thousands of years. It's a bad thing because there's a lot of product, right? And the good thing is everyone wants that Greek product, but you don't have many channels. So you got to get creative. You got to be ahead of the curve. You got to be organized as much as possible. Everybody's in survival mode right now. I know everybody on this panel is more than willing to help and engage, and that's why we're doing this right now and speaking, and we more than willing to continue it. But at the end of the day, you have to show that you've done the work. So there's an amazingly complex but beautiful legal system in the United States, and it's beautiful because it derived from Greece, and we've developed it over years. But you have to navigate it and know what your plan is. Make sure you have that key point of contact.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Koutsoudakis, Mr. Iakovou. I think one of the key topics, like a reoccurring theme, is doing your homework. It comes both in terms of the market and also in terms of the regulatory considerations, right? So I think it's very interesting because one of the people who can really help Greek businesses do their homework and approach this difficult topic is Mr. Michailidis, from his experience working with hundreds of Greek businesses. Can you tell us a little bit more about their experiences dealing with these issues? And also, where do you see some of the most promising opportunities for in the future here in the US?
Well, thank you very much all. Thank you for the organizers for having me on this panel. So what I could say about that is that the primary issue that most of the Greek companies that contact our office to do business, to expand their business in the US, is the fact that they need to most of them, they are small and medium enterprises, okay? Like small family businesses, regardless of the sector we're speaking of. So most of them, they have the idea that they can just establish business by exchanging a couple of emails with their US partners and interlocutors here in the US. That is not the case. You need first to establish, to have a contact with professionals based in the US, because this is a very complicated and very, very saturated and very, very multi-tier market. So you need to have associates based here in the US, specifically in the region of the US that you're looking to do business in. You need to have to establish good contact relations with an importer, with a distributor, with a legal firm, with an accountant, and then it's not only that, because as soon as you do that, you need to have your own persons here in the US promoting your product. Because all these legal professionals, they're not the ones who are going, well, they're doing a great job, but at the end of the day, it is up to each and every one, each and every individual company to do the job of promoting their own product. Because importers or distributors or legal entities, they cannot focus on each and every individual product. They have a vast array of different products they have to deal with. So what we have come to realize as the Greek Trade Office in New York is that companies that are really making a difference, and I'm specifically referring to branded products in the retail sector, branded products in the retail sector, they are companies that they have, so to say, their backs covered. And by saying that, I mean a well-established importer and distributor and legal entity, legal firm doing this job. And then you have to have somebody here to run, quote unquote, your product, to promote your product, to knock on the right doors, to establish connections with the right professionals, to get acquainted with buyers or professionals, whatever field of industry it is that you're engaged in. So that's the thing. And one other very important that I'd like to raise is the fact that we are watching an explosion of e-commerce. So especially during the pandemic, there was a dramatic decline in the sales, particularly in the food service sector, to a much lesser degree in the retail sector. But companies and people in the e-commerce business that we're speaking in, they saw the weakness in an almost 25 to 30% increase in their online sales. Right now in the US, there are almost 10, 11, or probably 12 companies, primarily owned by Greeks or Greek Americans, that they sell exclusively Greek packaged goods online. And these people, especially in the months of March and April, at the peak of the pandemic, they saw an increase of 25% on their sales. Now, this thing with the online sales has been going on for the last 5, 6, 7 years. And it has been steadily growing by almost 15% every year. It started at almost 5% back in 2016. But according to our data and the kind of information that we're getting, we're expecting this percentage to rise to almost 14 to 15%. The initial expectation was in 2025. Prior to the pandemic, that was the expectation prior to the pandemic. But now, during the pandemic, this expectation has boosted, and we expect to reach this percentage in 2023. By 2023, we expect online sales to represent almost 14 to 15% of the overall sales.
Can you tell us a little bit specifically about that point, since we see a lot of promise there? Are there any different regulatory considerations for a business who wants to engage in this direct sale approach? How does this change their calculation? What should they be aware of in terms of the regulations? Maybe customs, something more specific about them, navigating this from the licensing regulatory approach.
Well, there is a number of prerequisites and so to say criteria that a certain company has to fulfill in order to do that. All this has been laid out by the relevant authorities, the USDA and the FDA. It's all online. Of course, the product has to be FDA compliant, okay? But I would say that in most of the cases, most of these products, I would say like 60%, they are first exported to an online entity, to an online, so to say, partner who has his online platform based here in the US, and then he takes over the order fulfillment. So there are 10, 11 companies that are importing the goods from Greece. They have their own small or bigger, larger warehouses, or sometimes they're doing the packaging and order fulfillment at their own houses. And then they send out the product to the end consumer. But there are also now a couple of companies that are exporting directly from Greece. Now we are aware of a couple of companies in Greece that they are sending their products directly from Greece to the end consumer, to the US consumer. So that's the picture right now.
And they can reach out to you if they want more information about how they can actually, be successful in doing that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much about that. This was very interesting. I see, and we see some of the emails coming in with the questions. They identify some of the key themes that keep popping up. So if I were to summarize them and address them back to our business representatives of the panel, we see two main things. The first one is we need to do our homework, like the business need to do the homework. So doing homework is very important to be prepared. And the second one is be diligent and proactive. So from your experience, can you give us some, either examples, or can you elaborate more on the significance of operating in the US and specifically being proactive and diligent and doing your homework so that you can, engage with things that could have been foresought from the beginning, but instead you were caught by surprise had you not done your homework? And we should start with Mr. Economou, and then we'll close with Mr. Mastoras.
Sure. I think what we've done in the past, and since in the 2 years that I've been here, is we have great suppliers. We've met some great innovative companies in Greece. Last year during the Athens Food Expo, I was very impressed and proud to see all the innovations that are coming out of Greece. Young entrepreneurs who have some great ideas, products that I think in this market would do extremely well. However, they didn't go past looking at the labels. They're not FDA compliant. They haven't addressed the recycling issue on bottles and things like that. And they expect you as the importer, distributor, to guide them through that whole process. At the same time, even on companies that have the experience and know how to navigate through these regulatory processes, they also need to look at their actual costs. If you're competing in a category where you have Quaker Oats, Nabisco, some of the companies that have been here for 100 years, and they're out in the market and the regular SRP is $1.99, and your import cost is $1.99, it doesn't leave anything there's no margin left. Yeah, you can't just sit there and say, I'm so-and-so, take all my products. You have to really look at it from the logistics standpoint, saying, what does it cost to bring something in? What are the distribution costs? We've worked with companies where we've pointed out to them their errors in their calculations, and we've been able to help them redirect their focus. And now they, along with Loumidis, are making margins that are acceptable for both of us. And it allows us the flexibility to do promotions, to do larger scale purchases or sales to chain supermarkets and so on and so forth. So we invest in our understanding of what the processes are so that we can easily point out, say, nope, that's going to be an issue. Nope, that's going to be an issue. Don't forget, who do you think is your ideal competitor in this particular category? Once we do that, and once we collaborate with them, we're not sitting back saying, what do you have for us to look at? We're being proactive in this as well, to meet them in the middle.
This is the interesting point, the proactiveness, and I think this is something that keeps coming up. So thank you very much for stressing this again. And let's close with Mr. Mastoras. So again, Mr. Mastora, we hear that the name of the game here in the U.S. is being prepared in order to be successful and avoid pitfalls. So due diligence, doing homework, and being able to be prepared to engage with the market. Which are some of your own advice? What is some of your advice, like for that end of being proactive and doing your due diligence for entering the market? What would you have to elaborate on that as tips for our viewers?
First of all, I like what I hear before from all the previous speakers. It's been a pleasure in getting all this knowledge. We are in a survival game right now. We don't know what's coming tomorrow. We cannot make long-term macroeconomic plans. We go month to month, week to week, if you wish. Regarding the companies in Greece, it's true, as mentioned by Mr. Michailidis, the commercial that said before, Greek companies, if they want to export in this market, in the US market, they have to devote time, money, and effort to get a compliance with the US import regulations. Labeling, packaging, they have to register, and I've seen the import laws to become tougher and tougher every other year. So really, I think Enterprise in Greece and other associated organizations in Greece, they should organize meetings and educate all these exporters, because right now we are doing it for our partners in Greece, and we have a subsidiary in Greece company that we make the labels for them, and we quote unquote babysitting them regarding the laws, the labels, and everything else. But this is very, very important. Not everybody can export goods from Greece to the United States. We're dealing right now with a pandemic. We're dealing with a very unfavorable euro-dollar relationship, with right now the cost is around 121 euro to dollars 120, which makes the final product here expensive, as Mr. Economou pointed out before. So it's very, very unfavorable. And if I have a crystal ball and try to foresee the future, I would say that our future, as I said before, is